Welcome, Salina and Saline County voters. My name is Janet Hanson, and I have the privilege of interviewing the 7 candidates desiring to serve on the USD 305 Salina Public Schools School Board. And school board members represent the voice of the public and provide guidance, oversight, and vision for the districts that they serve. So Salina area voters will elect 4 candidates to the school board. I am happy to have you joining us for these interviews. Do not forget to exercise your right to vote. It is a right and obligation as a citizen. So the last day to register is October the 15th, 2019. General Election Day is Tuesday, November the 5th, 2019. You can find information about your registration status and the polling place at which to vote at www.voteks.org. Check it out. Welcome, Ann Zimmerman.
Thank you.
Ann, you are our incumbent school board member and our only incumbent school board member. So we're going to get right to the questions because I believe that is the best way for citizens to get to know you. Okay, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Salina. I live north of town now, but still in the USD 305 school district. I am a lawyer right now, and I mostly do mediation with my legal training. I do family mediations and some workplace mediations, and have been part of the group that started the Salina Initiative for Restorative Justice, which does victim offender mediations, especially in juvenile cases, and in some municipal cases we set it up so that the juvenile offenders have to sit across the table from their victims and work out something to make things right, and if they can carry out their agreement within their allotted time, they get their case dismissed. So it's a program I'm really proud of.
It should be.
I am also a singer-songwriter, so I sing in the schools and I sing for adults around the state and around the country. And my husband and I also run a horse boarding stable north of town. And so I have plenty of hats.
Yes, you do. And we're glad that you elect to take them on. What is your connection to USD 305 Salina Public Schools?
Well, I went to school here. I went to Hughesner and South Middle School, although it was South Junior High then. And I went to South High School when it was starting, when it was about a year old and it had pods, and now it looks different.
Yes.
I have 2 nephews and a niece. Well, the nephews have graduated now, and the niece is in high school. And I have an undergraduate degree in elementary education, so I have some background in education. But I'm all about making Salina better and making sure our schools are the best they can be. And I'm a big believer in public schools, which have to take everybody and help them succeed. We can't send them away because they aren't behaving. Our job is to educate everybody, and if they're gifted, we need to educate them to their potential, and if they are low functioning, we need to educate them to their potential, and that's the value of public schools. I'm a big believer in public schools.
Yep. And you know, one of the things that I say, somebody had pointed out to me that as a population, Salina's population is aging, and there's not as many children. And so I personally think everybody has a stake in public education, because these are the people that are going to take care of you in your old age. They're going to assist you. They're going to fix your cars. They're going to help your house. You know, so
teach your grandchildren.
That's right. So we're all in it together. You've kind of said a little bit about this, but we'll give you some time to enlarge on it. What do you see as the role of public schools in Kansas?
I believe that democracy depends on having an educated populace. And if we're going to govern ourselves, we have to have some knowledge to do it well.
Yeah.
There are, I mean, it's possible to govern yourself if you don't have a good education, but you would be better off if you could learn from history, learn just also to develop your own potential. And I guess it's available to everybody. That's a big part of it. You could go to a small private school, you wouldn't have as much diversity, you wouldn't have the contact with the very many layers of society.
Yeah.
Just because a person is low income doesn't mean they're not as bright or have as much potential as somebody with a higher income. If they have diversity of religion, diversity of race and ethnicity, those are all things that enrich your life. And they enriched my life, and I feel like I want the best for all the kids in Salina.
Yeah. I know you're also a participant in civil discourse, and that to me is one of the biggest lessons of civil discourse, is that you learn that almost everybody has something to teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
In your view, what is the role of a school board member?
The school board member is in charge of coming up with a vision for the district and the goals for the district. Just today I went to a training in Hayes on, since I just got elected president of the school board about 2 weeks ago, I went to a training on how to do that. And we are always reminded that we only have one employee. The school board has one employee. That's the superintendent. We hire them, we fire them, we supervise them, and then it's their job to do all the supervising of the teachers, the schools, the staff, the buildings, and our job is to set that vision and to set the goals for the district and to make sure the superintendent is carrying out our idea of what the school should be. And the superintendent has a job of all the details. And so if a person has some complaint about the school district, they can come to us, but our job is to say, go talk to the person on the staff that is in charge of that, because we are not in charge of the people except for the superintendent. So it's an interesting position, because people think you're really in charge of everybody, but we are really only in charge of the superintendent, and that's Lynn Exline now, and we are really happy to have her as our new superintendent.
Yes. So can you say a little bit about, and I know it's a big topic, so say just a little bit about what you are proud of in the vision of USD 305?
Well, our basic mission statement is learning for all, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And we are working like crazy to make that happen. And we have all sorts of options that we haven't always had. We have our new Equity Council. You're maybe going to ask me about that, but that was just formed in the last year and a half to make sure that we are being as fair as possible to every group in the school system, every type of student, every individual student, and that they're not being judged or disciplined too harshly based on their race or ethnicity or their state of disability or whatever else makes them different from others. And because that's a problem around the whole country.
Yeah.
And we're studying that hard, and that's been an issue for me since, well, I got my education degree at K-State and was part of a program called the Cooperative Urban Teacher Education Program, which worked with inner city schools. So I started my career as an inner city school teacher with lots of ethnic diversity, and I learned a lot about that. I had a very short career as a teacher and did something easier, so I went to law school. But I really think our teachers are wonderful, and if they're not wonderful, they aren't here long. They're gonna, we're gonna get some wonderful ones to replace them. So I'm really proud of our schools.
And so I think it's just incredible that you can't really get to diversity unless you live in diversity.
Yeah, well, you can, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but
Well,
you can
it's a lot easier if everybody is sort of like you.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, you don't have to think about it if everybody's like you.
Yeah, exactly. But if you really want the fruits of diversity, you have to go to that deeper spot. What unique capacities do you bring to this role?
I think that my education background gives me some basic ideas of education that I've had since before college, when I wanted to be a teacher, and in college, and after college doing the teaching. After that, I got, well, there were a few other things that happened, but I ended up with my law degree from Harvard Law School and came back to Salina, and that gives me a bigger perspective on Salina than I would have if I had just been here. Now, the more recent advantages to having me on the school board is that I have more experience on the school board than anybody that will be there after this election. And I've now been there for a full term plus a half a year because they changed the dates of the elections since I got elected. And so I'll be on, my first term will last 4.5 years. This term will be back to 4 years, but all of the experienced members of the school board, Gary Denning, Carol Brandert, and Nedra Elbel, they are all going off and not trying to get reelected. They've all been on there many years, somewhere between 12 and 16, 17. So I've become the institutional memory of the board.
Which is not, has been valuable.
It's not very long as far as institutional memory goes, but I've been working really hard to learn about the school district and to learn how to be a school board member, which is not that simple.
Yeah. So what is your level of satisfaction with funding for Kansas public schools? And how would you change funding if you could?
Well, we've got ourselves up to much closer to being adequate than it was a couple years ago. They just forgot to add in about 3 or 4 years of inflation to get us up to where we should be compared to about 10 years ago. Unfortunately, along with our increases, they just cut back on the state funding for special ed. And the federal funding for special ed,
which was already underfunded.
Yeah, the federal funding has never been up to par as to what the law requires, and so they've underfunded that for decades. And special ed can be very expensive and takes extra paraprofessionals and specialized teachers, and it's hard to find those teachers now. So in some of the particular specialties like speech language pathologists, we're searching for more of them, but we don't have enough, so we do some of that through an online program, which has the child with a para sitting next to them while they interact with the screen with the person at the other end of the internet line. And that is more expensive than a teacher.
Wow.
But we have to do it because they have to be given these speech language pathology special help that they need. And so we do that even though it's expensive, and we aren't funded fully for special ed. So it's expensive and we don't have enough money for that. But so we need more money for special ed from both the federal and the state. And then we need to make up that amount of inflation that they didn't take into account. And then we would be at a level that's determined that we would be able to get the kids up to the education that's appropriate and suitable for them.
Okay. So finally, I am going to give you several minutes to speak right to our viewers and tell them why they should support you for the Salina Public School Board.
Well, I really hope that I will get reelected. I'm the president now, and I would like to continue that position to make sure we have some experience on the board. I want to say that our board right now is high functioning. We have a really great board right now. Everybody on there is there for the kids and willing to have good conversations. We don't always agree, but we always have respectful discussions, and we feel like we come up with good answers to the problems that arise. And there's always something. I mean, we're in charge of approving the budget and making sure that there's enough money to go around and that the buildings are kept up to snuff. It makes me think of a time when I was teaching, and I had a pretty difficult time because I was teaching inner city kids, and I was fresh out of Salina. At one point in my early career as a teacher, I was being a substitute teacher, and it was a grade school that day, and they declined to let me in because they thought I was a sixth grader. So that's how I looked when I was 22 or 23. And so there I was with my class with lots of trauma kids that had rough home lives, and it was a very difficult time. But the worst day was the day that the bank of fluorescent lights crashed down on the desktops. And some people in my school claimed that the kids were hanging from the lights, but I really am confident that was not happening. They had thrown the ball across the room to put it in the closet, and it dislodged the lights. And there was a day in our Salina schools where I was in there singing, which I do a lot when I sing for Kansas Day, especially in the grade schools, and also sometimes at the middle schools. I also sing about the Revolutionary War and do songwriting workshops with 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. And I looked up, and there was a bank of fluorescent lights with a little bent part that looked like it could just fall out of the ceiling. And I called the building maintenance immediately, and they fixed it. And that's part of my job as a school board member, is to make sure that our buildings and our facilities are kept up and kept in good repair. And we need to make sure that that money goes to that too. Yeah. And so I have a particular soft spot for maintenance of buildings.
It's actually a public, it's a public resource. And it's probably an obligation to maintain the value of those resources.
Yes, and we have lots of public infrastructure around the country, and not all of it is kept up.
No.
But in Salina Public Schools, we are keeping it up. And that's important to the students and to everybody who has a stake in the school system. But the most important thing, of course, is the kids. And I want the gifted kids to just have their minds expanded to proportions that they never imagined. Yeah. And every kid to be able to read well, and kids that may have a less than a sense of success, to make them successful, to allow them to reach their potential. And that we do by having good policies, by hiring the superintendent, and the superintendent supervises all of the hiring across the district. And I think we're doing a great job, and I just want us to continue that. I'm hoping to meet with all the candidates because I have all this background, and I'm going to try and talk to each of them, give them some background, because it's actually a hugely time-consuming job being on the school board.
That's true.
We have 18 meetings a year for the basic school board meetings, but then we're all on at least a couple other committees around town. We have the Central Kansas Cooperative in Education, which is a special ed co-op that one of us serves on. Usually 2 people attend that one. We have the Smoky Hill Education Service Center, which is across the street from Central High School, which provides training and bulk purchasing for a whole bunch of districts around here, and we're on that committee. We were on the Parks and Rec board. We're on the Truancy Advisory Board, and there are about 10 or 12 of those, and we're all on some of them, and those usually meet at least once a month. And then we were always, I mean, the last year we had to be hiring superintendent and
all a lot of extras.
yeah, and we get paid a good meal
Yeah,
every
exactly.
board meeting. So
I actually don't think most people appreciate how much prep goes into every meeting.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is a volunteer job that you and these other citizens want to do for the children of Salina. And that's a pretty awesome thing. So thank you very much for your time. We've had a great conversation.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing how this election turns out.
Okay, and I've probably forgotten some really important things, but anyway, people can call me up. My number is on or my email, I think, is on the Salina USD305.com website. That's www.usd305.com. And if you look for school board, there we are.
That's right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.